Hi folks, and welcome to another episode of Careers and Coffee. Today I'm absolutely delighted to be welcoming a good friend of mine and just all-round amazing guy, business leader in Suffolk, Peter Basford. So Peter owns Business Growth Coaches Network. He does amazing work with innovation labs in Stowmarket, had an amazing career in finance, professional services. So let's bring on Peter to talk to us a little bit more about what he does and some of the fantastic work he's been doing. Good afternoon, Peter. How you doing?
Hi. How you doing?
Life's not bad. Yeah, life's not too bad actually. All things considered, with everything going on. But how's things been your end? Still keeping sane, I hope.
I think so. Yes, I think the definition of insanity is not when you talk to yourself; it's when you answer yourself back. And I haven't got to
Not
that
yet. Yeah. Like most important question: have you got coffee or hot beverage to hand?
I have a hot beverage in a big Ipswich Town mug.
This is what we like. This is what we like. Guests who are prepared, organised, on it. Well, look, let's crack on with things because I know you very well and all the amazing work that you do. And I know a lot of folks who probably watch this will as well. But there's going to be a lot of students out there who want to know what Peter Basford does. So, yeah, tell us who's Peter. What do you get up to?
As well as watching Ipswich, and that's probably the worst thing for my health and well-being at the moment. But outside of that, after school, I wanted to go into horticulture. Actually, that was my thing, and I couldn't find a role that I wanted, so I ended up at Lloyds Bank.
Okay.
Big difference really. Started in Bury St Edmunds, and actually did a variety of roles across the group over many years, and spent 16 years up in the northeast of England, working sort of broadly from Newcastle, but travelling around from there in different parts of the group, and then came back to Suffolk in 2014 and led the commercial team down in Suffolk for the last sort of 4 years of my Lloyds time, and then it was time to go and do something else. So I set up Business Growth Coaches Network with a couple of colleagues, which is a business that helps and supports businesses with coaching, mentoring, guidance. We currently have about 30 in the team, so we've expanded out from East Anglia up to the north again, down into Bristol, and we've got a couple of international coaches in Denmark and Cyprus. Other things I'm up to, well, I co-founded the Innovation Lab in Stowmarket, which is a co-working space for young sort of startup tech businesses. We've got great plans to grow that, and we've been on a call this morning looking at other sites across Suffolk to try and help more sort of entrepreneurs with that. Yeah. I became a member of the LEP Skills Board, so trying to help the next generation is a real key thing for me as well. So I'm involved in that. I'm a non-exec director at Havebury Housing Association, the DPO Centre and Foster's Financial. And then, as you know, in 2019, we started the Suffolk Apprentice, which is the TV show, trying to help people that want to start their own business, but also doing something for Suffolk charities. And we'll run that again, hopefully, when we're out of COVID in 2021. So a few to keep me out of mischief.
Yeah, just twiddling your thumbs, really, not up too much. That sounds fantastic. But with all of that, what does sort of an average day tend to look like, if there sort of ever is one?
It's a little Groundhog Day at the moment. It's here, sat at a screen, talking to lots of businesses, talking to perhaps the councils about what they're up to in their economic development teams, to find out, where the grants are to help businesses. Talk to other coaches quite a bit as well, both within our network and others that might want to come and work with us. And a big part is obviously on the back of meetings with clients is taking the actions from that and then trying to do something with them to help their business to progress. So sometimes business development, sometimes helping them manage the risk in their business, whatever is appropriate to help them along the way. And repeat lots of times.
That's busy stuff. Now look, now we sort of know what you're currently up to. Let's sort of rewind the clocks back to when Peter was at school. What was school like for you? What was a careers advice like? Tell us about
Not great in terms of careers advice. I think I would say it was very much, what do you want to do? Okay, well, you better go and find that out. There was a little bit, I think. So I went to the grammar school in Thetford, and I think the expectation of the school, even many years ago when I was there, was you did O levels in those days, A levels, and then you went to university. And university was never for me. It just wasn't something that I had any interest in. I wanted to have a few pounds in my pocket at that stage and was ready to work. I think I didn't need to go off to uni. So the careers advice, I think for me, it didn't really work because I didn't want to go on the path that they expected, people from grammar school to go on, which is you go off to university and further your education. I was done with that. I was ready to get out there and start earning some money and experience business.
That sounds fantastic. And let's talk a little bit more about business growth coaches. Now, what does a business coach do?
Help, guide, support a business owner and their leadership team, I would say. And how do you do that? Well, get in there and speak to the business owner and find out what's on their mind. What are the things that are keeping them awake at night, and then talking those things through to try and find ways to move those on. So instead of it being a worry bead, it starts being something that's either dealt with or moved forward within the business. How do I do that? I suppose in part from experience, from having seen the situations before and seen those that have found a good way to get out of that and those that might still be looking for a way. So you try and steer them to those that have been successful in moving it on. And then part of it's about ideas in terms of suggesting different ways that they might progress and then connecting them up with others that can help them. So for me, Business Growth Coaches Network, the most important word is network. It's about my extended network of the coaches and outside of that, of who do I know that can help someone to progress with what's on their mind and what's worrying them.
And what's it been like during COVID? Because you talked there about, leaning on your previous experience, but, I don't think many of us have had experiences quite like what we're in at the moment. So how's that been, trying to sort of support businesses through the last year and also to continue doing so?
Incredibly busy. I don't think even in my banking career, I've worked consistently as hard over such a long period as I have for the last 18 months. Some of that's by choice. I think if you go back to lockdown 1, there was furlough to understand. There were, first of all, bounce back loan. Then there was this Sybil's loan. Then we had grants coming in from the councils. Some of those were launched very well, some not quite so well. So there was quite a lot of signposting and encouraging and speaking to people like the British Business Bank about how things were and weren't working and what else they needed to do to get bounce back to work better. Speaking to all of the councils locally in terms of businesses that we knew that wanted some grant support and trying to understand what grants were available and make sure that the conversations were good between the business and the council. We did that. Obviously, we did that for our clients, but equally, any business that we could talk to, we would talk to, because this is a unique situation, and lots of people were very concerned. So we just got out and about and tried to help as much as we can through that. That's continued. Obviously, we're in lockdown 3 now. And again, we're back into the run of grants being announced via councils, obviously from money from the government. There's still sort of bounce back, Sybil's and whatever is the next version of that the Chancellor will produce fairly soon. So lots of just trying to help businesses through. And businesses obviously have been in completely different places with this, from some that have done quite well to some, gyms, spas that have been shut for quite a while and are really struggling. So doing whatever we can to try and keep them on the straight and narrow and still have a business when this all calms down.
No, that's a fantastic insight. I know that sort of where we're living, Suffolk, Norfolk, SMEs are the bedrock of our economy, and I think for a lot of the work that both yourself and I do, it's supporting those. So I think it's brilliant to get an insight. What I do want to talk about though is young people and enterprise and skills, because I know that you've done a phenomenal amount of work to support young people, whether it be through Suffolk Apprentice, being an enterprise advisor, and doing lots of other great work. What do you think are some of the key skills that young people need to have moving into the world of work?
Yeah, so when I talk to businesses about this, I quite often talk about, when they talk about their employees, about the difference between will and skill. So for me, skill is about the technical knowledge to do a job, whatever that might be, from being able to operate a machine or a computer would be very much in the skill side. Will, I think, is as important, if not more important. So having the right attitude, being open, interested in the business, interested in why you're doing what you're doing. Very much that willingness to learn, to ask questions, show some personality, and the ability to engage, and the right attitude. For me, they're as important, if not more important, than the skill piece. And sometimes, businesses that I'm working with will come to me with an issue around a member of staff, and you can pin it back to that will and skill. Can they physically do the job properly and well? Is their attitude right? Is the will right? And of those two, the much more difficult one to adapt is the will piece. Because ultimately, you can send people on loads of courses. There's the World Wide Web has got so much information on there. You can train people to do most things if they have the right attitude and the willingness and openness to do that. So for me, it's much more about that will piece. Get your attitude right, and you can go an awful long way.
Definitely. Thank you for that. We've just got a question to say, do you think students would benefit from understanding more about coaching for performance?
I think so, yes, at an early stage. I think, again, you asked me about my early days. I had no idea about any of this at that stage. And would that have helped me? Absolutely. So yes, I think that's a really good question. And an understanding of what coaching is all about and how that can have a positive impact.
Thank you. Well, I'll come back to that one in a moment. But something you also talked about there. We're talking about soft skills, and I know a lot of the work of a business coach is, yes, you do need to share that technical knowledge of, a P&L or a marketing plan. But actually, I think sometimes, especially given the circumstances, is just having a word with someone, just having a chat and saying that these are the stresses I'm going through. How do we make sure that we've got more students who are in the right mindset moving forwards? And I know in particular, sort of, how do we develop more of an entrepreneurial mindset?
I mean, for me, the entrepreneurial mindset is very much about the way of thinking. And I think that, you can go a certain amount of the way when you get into workshops around that too. So having a coordinator or a coach, you could do this. I've done this as well, where you get people to think differently about what the issue is. And for me, that entrepreneurial mindset is about never accepting that something can't be done in a different way. Looking for new ways of doing things, wanting to find a different way to make money or to make a change. It's quite a lot of social entrepreneurs. It's much more about the change that they want to create rather than can I fill my bank account, but to do something differently and looking for a different way of doing that. And I think for every generation, and particularly young people, they will come at things from a completely different way of doing something than the way that I would in my day when I was younger. But it's that thought process around, that's a silly thing, the way they've always done that. What about if we did it this way? And it's that sort of mindset and that way of thinking. And then how do I take that from being a bit of an idea into being something that I can then set up a business and grow?
Fantastic. Thank you. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Suffolk Apprentice in a moment, but we just got another question. So what exactly does a business coach do?
What exactly so I suppose people ask me, what do I do? And I can only really talk for the way I go about it, because there are, 1,001 different ways and different books on what business coaching is. For me, I talk to businesses about broadly the following areas. What's going on with their income? Is it up, down? What do they want it to be? What's the direction of travel of their income? How are they trying to grow their business? So what's the business development area that they're working on, and how can we help them with that? What do their customers think of what they're doing? Have they got enough customers? How are they keeping their existing customers really, really happy? What are they doing with digital? I mean, that's massive for all of us now. But, what is your digital strategy within your business? And we've seen in the last year, if you say, for example, garden centres as just a one-off example, typically you always went to a garden centre and chose your plants. None of us could go to a garden centre. So the smart ones very quickly moved online. Okay, so, that's a whole piece of digital that they needed to create an e-commerce platform to design plants, pictures of plants, set up a click and collect service. They'd never traditionally done that. It was all about watering plants and making them look very pretty for when people went in. So complete change around of that business, and those that have adapted very quickly have been quite successful. Spend a lot of time talking about the people, because no business owner can do it on their own. So what are they doing with their people? How are they developing their people? What are their thoughts about latterly around things like Kickstarter as a way of taking on some new employees is something this morning I've been talking to a business about. What are they doing in terms of work experience and interns to get people to understand what's going on in their business? And then generally around the risks. What's going on with the risks of your business? What are the big risks in your business, and how are you trying to mitigate them? So that's what I do around business coaching, a number of those areas, and helping people to think about those areas if they perhaps missed something, and make sure that we then cover that off and help them to build their business further.
Excellent stuff. Thank you. And I did promise we're going to come back to it. So Suffolk Apprentice, tell us a little bit more about that, because you launched this, was it 2019, which seems about
2019, yes,
2,000 years ago now. But tell us a little bit more about this, because this is a fantastic project. I hope we are going to see it again soon. Tell us. Yeah,
so Suffolk Apprentice, it is broadly along the lines of The Apprentice that you would know from the TV with Alan Sugar and his henchmen.
Does it make you Alan Sugar then?
Absolutely not. I'm much too nice to do that role. So effectively, we got a group of local businesses together to help sort of support and sponsor the event and act as Alan Sugar and his team. And each month, the candidates would do a project for a Suffolk-based charity. And the projects were very different, from helping design a business plan to run some shops for the hospice in Bury St Edmunds, to creating a promotional video for SARS, which is the 999 service. So a real range of projects during the course of the year that actually helped the candidates to understand how a business works. So, because a lot of the things that work in a charity equally would work within a business. So by the end of the program, we had 4 finalists, and they all presented their business plans to us. And finally, a winner emerged from that. The 4 finalists were all fantastic, it has to be said, and have all gone on to set up their own businesses since then. Tom James, who won the program, it has really kicked on. So his business idea was a wellness van that would go to the City of London, park up outside the high pressure solicitors, financial services businesses, and staff would be able to pop out and have a sort of what it's called reset and chill. So a 10-minute sort of chill time in a really good space. And we were really excited about that. Clearly COVID then hit and nobody is in the City of London. So he has adapted that business, as we all have to in business, very quickly. And now is kitting out camper vans to extraordinary standards. And then, so he rents one and then he sells one. He rents one and he sells one. So he's building a fleet of vans that people can take away and have a chill within. But he's funding that by buying and selling one as well. So his business is now up and running. 2019, we ran the program. 2020 has been about helping him get his business up and running. And now 2021, we'll go back to trying to find another group of candidates, another 14 candidates from young people around Suffolk that would like to get involved. We won't start until COVID enables us to get together sort of face to face, because I think it's better to possibly delay and do it that way rather than try and do something before we can. But yeah, so I'll let you have the details to get out around your connections once we're ready to go.
That sounds fantastic. And I think it's so important that, we've got organisations like that. And I know that you work with lots of other local business leaders for the mentoring side of things as well. And, seeing all of that going on, I thought it was brilliant. It was fantastic work.
I think the businesses that got involved, so the people that acted as the mentors, people like Mel Banks from John Banks Honda, Duncan Foster from IRTL, Pat Lewis from Source One, Bev Gedge from Compass Point. They got very engaged with the people that were on the program. So not only did they help judge and provide funding for the winning prize, but actually their help and guidance and engagement has helped the businesses as well, because they're part of their support network now.
It's fantastic work. It's fantastic work. Now, let's talk a little bit more about you. So, you've had an amazing career, and I think it's interesting to see how you sort of diversified from Lloyd's to now business growth coaches, right through to innovation labs, and sort of non-exec roles and everything in between. But what have been some of the highs and some of the lows of your career to date?
Wow. Highs, I think. I moved through Lloyd's at a reasonable rate, and that was not because I'm the most gifted academically, but much more about my attitude and about just chucking myself into things and getting things done, and being clever enough to know when I made mistakes. So my career really, really took off when I ran Lloyd's private banking in Norwich. So it was my first managerial appointment. I was only late 20s at that stage, probably one of the youngest board appointees in the bank. And I made a number of mistakes. I really, I did. There was a great group of very experienced people that I was suddenly thrown into being the leader of. And I did some things wrong in terms of my communication skills, in terms of my understanding of what motivated them and expectations. But I was smart enough to work out that I'd got things wrong and didn't make the same mistake twice. Because it's okay. Every business makes mistakes, but you have to learn from those things. So I got promoted up to the northeast to Newcastle, and I'd learned the mistakes I'd made in Norwich I didn't make again in Newcastle. And Newcastle had gone from not doing very well to being top performing office, and that brings a load of attention. And so I got promoted again from there to be regional director for East, North and Scotland, and then had a number of offices and their managers that reported to me. So that was a real high. And we opened new offices for the private bank in Scotland where they hadn't been before, and took the staff with us. We spent a lot of time in terms of staff engagement and working really closely with them. So we had a really, really good team. Left that and set up a new part of the bank. So we started with 10 people. We grew it to 72. We were making 32 million a year when it sort of came to an end in the 2008 crash. And again, that was a great time because we took the people with us. They were very much part of what we did. And there was only 10 of us. There was 4 leaders. We couldn't do it all. So we very much, through necessity, had the staff very closely involved in what we were doing. And that paid dividends for us because they were so engaged that they helped us grow that business very quickly.
That's fantastic. Another question. So what has been one of the most difficult interview questions you've either been asked or had to ask an interviewee?
It is. I think, and what I see a lot from business people now is the situation questions. So what I mean by that is, give me an example of a time when you did something, and then show me what the outcome of that was. The ones I always found very difficult were the negative ones, which was, give me an example of a time where it didn't work out very well, and what did you do about it?
Yeah.
And I always found that quite a difficult question, because either you bare your own soul to say, hey, I really screwed up, or you blame the organization. And of course, if you blame the organization, someone goes, you're not taking responsibility, so you can't win. So those were the ones that I had to prepare more for, were those questions that were very much around, what if they ask me one of those negative questions? How do I come across positive when I respond to that? I think one of my big tips with interviewing, because I do a bit of interview coaching now, is the day before, the week before, when you're preparing for that interview, is to get a piece of A4. I used to call it "Why Me" was my version. So I'd write across the top of the page, "Why me?" And then I'd list all of the really good things that I knew I could do, and why that job that I was going for was right for me. So, I've got the appropriate skills. I've done this role I've done the work in my previous role for this job. There's nobody better that I know of that has the appropriate level of expertise to do this job. I've got the energy, all of those things. And I would write that out. And actually, when I sat outside that interview room, that was the last thing I'd read before I went in, because we're all really nervous. So you can't take in any of the questions that you've prepped, but just going down that, just remind yourself before you walk in the room why you are the right person. So you're going with that very positive approach to the interview, that I'm the right person.
I think that's brilliant advice. And I also want to talk to you a little bit about LinkedIn and social media. How important is it? If you're a young person, I think it's probably more relevant for your sixth formers, college pupils, apprenticeships, etc. How important is it that you've got a LinkedIn profile, you're keeping it updated, you're putting content on? What's your advice to a young person who's sort of setting that up?
I mean, I train on LinkedIn, so I'm obviously going to say it's amazing. You should be on it. Everybody should be on LinkedIn. Of course they are. I think a truism is, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And connection is the key to how you can move on, and building that network again of people that can support you. One of the ways, particularly at the moment with lockdown, that you can do that is build your network of who knows you and what you're about by using LinkedIn. And I think, generally speaking, that all of the business people I know all want to help young people.
Yeah,
I don't know anybody
without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, this, what you do here with Careers and Coffee proves it. The number of guests that you get on, they all want to help young people and guide them. So I would really encourage people to get onto LinkedIn. First of all, you build a decent profile that says what you're about, and your experiences is really important. So whether that's some part-time work or something you've done for a charity, because you won't have a long history in business where you've worked, what your education has been, are all really good things to put on there. Then what I would encourage young people to do is not to be sending lots of typed messages to people. Once you've managed to connect with them, is to use certainly the mobile version on your phone, where you can send video messages. And if you're not comfortable with that, you can send voice messages. And I would very much encourage young people to use those things, because you'll stand out, because everybody's typing inbox messages.
That's brilliant advice.
And you'll really, you'll stand out from the crowd, which is effectively what interviews is about, is getting yourself from one of 100 applicants to be the one that stands out and gets to interview, to then be able to showcase and talk about the business and whether it's right for you, as well as whether they're right the other way around.
Agreed. Because I tell you, I usually, I get War and Peace on LinkedIn, and then the last line is, by the way, can you help me with so and so? There must be a better way to do it. So I think video, voice message is the way to go. Very, very briefly, because I'm conscious of time. What do you like about living and working in New Anglia?
So Suffolk is God's own county. it's the best place to live in the country. I mean, Northumberland was pretty good, but Suffolk's better. You know, we've got a space that's 100 miles north to south and 100 miles across. You know, with the coast at one side, beautiful Bury St Edmunds at the other side, Newmarket on our doorstep, and I think again through lockdown, we've seen the benefits of being sort of semi-rural. You know, who would want to live in a flat in London or another big city through lockdown? It must be horrendous, and we've got such a beautiful place that we all live in. So I think it's a great place to live. In terms of the business community, I genuinely think it's one of the most friendly places that you can run a business, because people do want to help each other and they look out for each other, and if they can do business together, they will. So I think it's a great place to be outside of one of the big cities. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Good advice. I'll tell you what, Rightmove should sponsor us at this rate. Well, look, Peter, I'm going to close it there. Huge thank you for coming on to Careers and Coffee today. As always, just an absolute delight speaking to you and hearing about all the brilliant.
Pleasure, Jordan. Pleasure. Anytime. Speak to you soon.
So, folks, that was Peter Basford. You know, as you've heard there, amazing work he's doing. Everything from Business Growth Coaches Network right through to non-exec of 1,000,001 different agencies, also innovation labs in Stowmarket. We'll put all the links, so be sure to check them out. So that's today's Careers and Coffee. Be sure to tune in on Thursday. We've got Kelly Cartwright talking to my colleague Ashley about her work. So tune in Thursday, 12:30. They look forward to seeing you then. Thanks.